Welcome into the HoosierIllustrated.com Indiana football postgame wrap-up show. John Alden from In Touch with Indiana Sports and Alec Lasley, publisher of HoosierIllustrated.com, with you this morning. Indiana knocks off Purdue 66-0 in the battle for the Old Oaken Bucket in what was a snow globe type of game. And really, dominance from start to finish. I mean, it didn't even look like these two teams belonged in the same field. And We'll get into some of the numbers here in a minute, but Alec, how you doing here on this lovely Sunday morning, this snowy Sunday morning?
Yeah, good. I mean, I think a lot of Indiana fans have to be feeling pretty good about after last night. I think it was just a culmination of everything that went into kind of building this program over just a 12-month period, 12 months to the day.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
today's the anniversary of Curt Cignetti's hiring. How fitting.
Yeah, exactly. And to do that after a 66-0 performance and kind of really put an exclamation point. I know he kept talking this week about putting an exclamation point on the end of the regular season here. And no better way, obviously, to do it than what they did last night. I think that was from start to finish, just total domination, like you said, and clearly looked like two programs that did not need to be on the same field in terms of talent, in terms of skill, in terms of coaching, and in every aspect of that football program in relation to both Indiana and Purdue.
Well, it's crazy because Purdue has dominated this rivalry since Indiana last won 2019, and to see how quickly you can flip the script now in this new age of college football. I've said this a few different times this season. Indiana and Curt Cignetti have now become a hell of a case study for how you can turn a program around in one season, and capping it off with a 66-0 victory, the largest margin of victory in the history of the Old Oaken Bucket game. I mean, it validates so many things. Go ahead.
And in Indiana's program history over an FBS team. Which
I saw that in the AP era, right? Since 1934 or something like that. Wow. So
so I mean,
we'll say this.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you add that in. You add the fact that again, and we'll touch on this in a little bit here, but just the Curt Cignetti talked about the style points, right? Winning with style and the pure domination that they've obviously shown in every game outside of maybe obviously the Ohio State game and then maybe portions of that Michigan performance, but really going out there and making exactly the type of statement that you needed to make at this point in the season. But they've been doing it right all year. I mean, it was the fifth time that they've won by at least 30 points, which ties a program record dating back to 1917. So it just shows you from every single aspect of this program this year, just what they've done, the attention to detail leading to these dominant performances. And last night was obviously no different.
I want to take a look at some of the stats from last night. I'll start with the individuals. Curtis Rourke, 23 for 31, 349 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. Hell of a bounce-back performance from him after struggling against Ohio State. Justice Ellison, only 63 yards on 11 carries, 1 touchdown. He was Indiana's lead rusher. But Elijah Surratt, hell of a game for him. 8 receptions, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns. Another sort of, after having a couple of weeks where it felt like, yeah, he was always open, like he says, but he had some crucial drops in some big moments, not only against Ohio State, but against Michigan as well. Good to see him bounce back. And then getting into some of these team numbers. I'll just go ahead and get the big one out of the way right here. Total yards, Indiana 586, Purdue 67. Purdue only had 1 more yard than Indiana's point total on the night. And if that doesn't say that there's issues with Ryan Walters and things that are going on with that program right now, then I don't know what else does. I believe many people aren't expecting Ryan Walters to be the head coach at Purdue. Honestly, I haven't been on Twitter too much so far this morning, so there is a chance that maybe something was announced. I'm not saying that there has, but it wouldn't surprise me if there had been. But either way, complete, as we've said a few times already in the first 5 minutes of this show, utter dominance from the Hoosiers last night.
Yeah, and again, we've come to say this almost after again every single game, but the fact that we've seen this from teams around the country this year where they need to go out and put together a good performance, regardless of who they're playing, and they've struggled. Right? I mean, Georgia struggled against Georgia Tech, obviously a much different opponent than what Purdue is, but they need to go out and make a strong statement. Tennessee struggled against Vanderbilt to begin their game as well, and just a lot of other teams around the country. Does not matter who they're playing, where they're playing, just continue to struggle in games that they are not only highly favored in, but games that they clearly are more talented in. And we've seen this from Indiana teams in the past where they maybe be they're that team that some of the other opponents struggle with. Ohio State, for instance, has struggled obviously at times against Indiana when it's at Indiana, and Indiana just has not done that. They've played the same level of consistent football all season long. They've never stooped to their opponent's level of play, and they've never played down to the competition level. And I think that shows you just how focused this team has been all season, but more importantly, just how bought in this team has been to what Coach Signetti and the rest of this coaching staff have really been preaching, which has been, if you really focus on all the details that you're supposed to focus on, really good things will happen and you guys will win by a lot of points. And that's exactly what they've done. And I think it just, you kind of hit it on the head, right? Just a phenomenal case study of how to not only win a coaching search, but then to flip an entire program. And again, 12 months to the day from a team that obviously was at the very bottom of the Big Ten last year, but has been for the past 3 years. Again, only totally 9 wins, both in conference play and outside, right? In a 3-year period, and to flip that into an 11-1 team that's going to be playing a game in the college football playoff, regardless of if they host or not, is just a phenomenal turnaround, and one that, again, not a lot of people expected this year, especially with them being picked 17th out of 18 teams in the Big Ten in the preseason poll.
And I still love that quote. I don't know if you remember this, Alex. Surely you will in just a second if you don't. But at Big Ten Media Day, Curt Cignetti completely calls out being picked 17th and mentions how every time that he had been picked last in the league prior, they'd either followed that up with a championship game appearance or winning their conference championship. And unfortunately, Indiana will not be playing in the Big Ten championship, but they do tie for second. Penn State, of course, getting that tiebreaker due to it's because of us of common opponent records, right? That's why Penn State gets in over Indiana.
Yeah, I believe that's kind of how it falls. Obviously, everyone came to know if Penn State were to lose that one, Indiana would be in. But I think that's the one tiebreaker, since there's obviously no head-to-head there.
And then you mentioned the college football playoff. Obviously, they would have been presumed to still be in regardless of some of the results that took place, but you did get a little help from Miami losing against Syracuse on the road. You would have gotten even more help had Georgia lost in their 8 overtime game to Georgia Tech. And then you thought things were pretty close between Notre Dame and USC for a while as well. But I've seen one projection, Alec, that I think is pretty intriguing. And really, anything other than maybe a rematch with Ohio State would probably something that you could get excited about. And not that Indiana, wouldn't be excited about being in the playoff in general, but the point of this playoff is to hopefully not get matched up with your conference, or at least somebody that you played already in the first round. But one I think this is from Mike Nizelek, I already saw. He has Indiana projected to go on the road to Notre Dame as an 11 seed, Notre Dame being the 6th seed. And I think, for the in-state reasons, I think that would be a pretty interesting matchup to see. Not only just because Notre Dame has kind of been the dominant program historically in football in the state, but to know that they're a little vulnerable, and if Indiana can carry some momentum that they have right now into that type of game, in potentially a weather environment that is similar to what they had last night, I think it's kind of good that they had that type of weather that they played in, honestly, considering there's a decent chance no matter who they go on the road to face, unless it's someone down in the SEC, you're going to be playing in conditions like that more than likely heading into this college football playoff.
Yeah, and I mean, even at Ohio State too, right? The last couple of weeks, have been not the best weather conditions. Obviously, totally flipped the script in terms of their production from Ohio State to Purdue, obviously for multiple different reasons. But yeah, playing in different weather conditions at this point of the season as you wrap up. I mean, the one thing that I think I'm more interested in, regardless of who they play, where they play, is how they respond after having 20 days off now.
Yeah.
That's something that you obviously don't see during the regular season. And that's one aspect that I think is just for a team that's obviously never been in that type of environment before. It'll be interesting to see how things play out. I know, Kurt Signetti talked about it last night, even just how, rigorous the routine is still going to stay. But you have a lot of different aspects in there now. We talked about, end of season evaluations, meetings that he's having with players. They're going to start hosting players from the transfer portal on official visits and everything too. So, because the portal opens up this week, right? So there's a lot of different avenues now that coaching staff is going to have to go into. And they're still going to have to obviously get ready for an opponent that they're not going to know about for another week and a half. So there's a lot of things that are still at play here. And it's going to be interesting to see how obviously, this coaching staff really, plays with, giving this team a little bit of time off, but obviously, still going through the rigorous kind of week to week prep that they continue to do each and every week, because that's one thing that, just not a lot of people talk about, is having that much time off for a team that I think wants to continue to play, especially after the efficient performance last night.
And that's true, but on the other side of it, every other team, or the other team they face, whether they're the host or not, they're also going to have this 20-day layover.
Potentially, right? Yeah.
Because it won't be, I guess if you do face someone who played in a conference championship, you could end up.
It'll just be a little bit less, right? If they don't win, and it's just a week difference, right? Outside of Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's the only other team that's not going to be obviously playing for that conference championship. But again, a lot of teams are obviously still going to deal with that. I think it's more so the aspect that, right, Indiana, I think, is a team though that wants to continue to play. They're obviously extremely healthy right now. It's not like they need the time off to get healthy. They're just a team that I think rides on a lot of momentum, and we've seen that in each and every game this year. And a lot of these other teams right now, I feel like, are limping to the finish line. Whereas Indiana, obviously coming off of a phenomenal performance last night against Purdue, I think they just want to. You can't do anything about it at this point, right? But I think they're just a team that just wants to continue to play. And maybe having that time off is just not something that I think they're looking forward to, versus maybe a few other teams that, again, are not playing at its best right now and need to kind of hit the reset button.
And this is going to be interesting because, of course, this being the first 12-team playoff, there's no blueprint to look at from any previous team on how to attack this many days off when you're going into a playoff scenario. So, but Kurt Signetti, we know he is very process-oriented. You mentioned it's going to still be rigorous for his team these next several weeks. And with him being a disciple of Nick Saban, you would expect nothing less than that. So it'll be very interesting to see how things play out, what ends up happening. There will definitely be another college football playoff rankings reveal on Tuesday, but that still will not be the final ranking that Indiana ends up getting, because of course we'll have conference championship week next Saturday. And then the following Tuesday, is it the Tuesday? Do they still do it on Tuesday after that?
I think they do it the Sunday after the championship Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah. So after the final day of conference championships, apparently the day after is when the final college football playoff rankings will be revealed, where we will find out Indiana and the location in which they will be traveling to, more than likely. I guess, is there an off chance that they are hosting? I know it's probably unlikely at this point, but what result, if you have already thought about this, what result could take place that you think could potentially get Indiana back into that hosting spot?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting because, I think they had a lot more of an opportunity there if either one of, Georgia or Tennessee were to lose, and both of them obviously did not. So I think it's going to be tough for Indiana to play host, right? I think everyone that needed to lose in that aspect won, and they didn't get quite the help when it came to that aspect, versus obviously last weekend when they got just about every single potential help from every team around the country that lost after they did. But I think it's going to be pretty difficult for Indiana to play host at this point, unless all hell breaks loose. Which, I mean, theoretically, I guess could happen, but with just championship weekend up, there's a lot of that I think is pretty much settled in right now, and now it's more about kind of who the matchup's going to be, and kind of what those final couple teams at the at-large spot get in, and what that looks like.
Be sure to check out everything going on at HoosierIllustrated.com and subscribe to Hoosier Illustrated on YouTube. Check out In Touch with Indiana Sports Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We'll have you covered on all things Indiana football, Indiana basketball, and whatever else we decide to chat about during the week. Alec, appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk later, maybe this week or maybe next week. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it, John.
This has been another edition of the HoosierIllustrated.com post-game wrap-up show.